It's time now for your business update with our business editor, Charles Pellegrin. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Jeannie.
So you're focusing today on a report by the World Bank and the United Nations, which is putting a dollar figure to the infrastructure destruction in Gaza since the war there began October 7th.
That's right. The human toll of the war rightfully gets more coverage, but looking at the material damage is crucial as well, especially to get a sense of how difficult reconstruction will be once this war reaches some form of conclusion. The World Bank report is based off of remote data collection sources and estimates that the damage to critical infrastructure between October 2023 and the end of January is worth $18.5 billion, just over 17 billion euros. To give you a sense of what that represents, it's almost the entirety, 97% of the gross domestic product of Gaza and the West Bank in 2022. So all that was produced in the Palestinian territories that year. The destruction has created 26 million tons of rubble, which will take years to remove, especially as 92% of primary roads have either been damaged or destroyed, and the communications infrastructure has also been seriously impaired.
So you're talking about roads, Charles. What kind of infrastructure has been most affected?
Every sector has been affected, and in some cases, the rate of damage appears to have leveled off, basically because there isn't anything left to destroy. If we look at the breakdown of that infrastructure loss, a large majority, almost 3/4 of it, is housing. This has left over 1 million people without homes. 19% is public service infrastructure, so relating to water, health, and education. 84% of all health facilities have either been damaged or destroyed, while the remaining facilities lack access to electricity or water. And when it comes to education, 100% of children in Gaza are currently out of school. The remainder is damage to commercial and industrial buildings.
In the meantime, let's take a look at the other side of this conflict. How is Israel coping financially with the war?
Well, Israel avoided some bad news on Tuesday on this topic when ratings agency Fitch affirmed its sovereign debt rating at A+, meaning it's vouching basically for Israel's ability to repay its debts. However, it did downgrade its outlook as it needs to further assess the impact of the war on Gaza and on Israel's finances. Israel has relied on debt to fund its war needs since October, selling 61 billion shekels in bonds by the end of February. That's about 15 billion euros, and issuing another 7.4 billion euros last month. The central bank estimates that the war will cost 255 billion shekels over 2023 to 2025. And that's basically just under 64 billion euros.
Charles, another business story you've been looking at for us today. The U.S. President Joe Biden and the Chinese President Xi Jinping had a nearly 2-hour phone call on Tuesday.
And among the topics discussed, a push by U.S. lawmakers to force China's ByteDance to divest its U.S. operations for the popular social media platform TikTok. The phone call comes as the U.S. is considering a new raft of sanctions on Chinese imports aimed at protecting America's nascent green energy industry. Bryan Quinn has this.
In their first direct conversation since the 2023 summit, Joe Biden let his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping know that he too is on board as U.S. lawmakers prepare legislation that could force China's ByteDance to sell its U.S. operations for the blockbuster video sharing app TikTok.
He made it clear to President Xi that this was not about a ban of the application, but rather our interest in divestiture, so that the national security interests and the data security of the American people can be protected.
Washington fears that TikTok could be used to gather massive amounts of data on its American users for Beijing, and that it could be used as a tool for propaganda and misinformation in China's interests. On Wednesday, China's foreign ministry lauded the call as candid and constructive, but slammed the U.S.'s targeting of TikTok and its increasing focus on Chinese subsidies for green energy exports.
The United States has launched an endless stream of measures to suppress China's economy, trade and technology, and the list of sanctions against Chinese companies keeps getting longer. This is not de-risking, but rather the creation of risks.
Washington is indeed worried that China's domestic economic slump is pushing it to lean hard on exports, creating a flood of cheap goods on the global market, a threat to Western solar energy and electric vehicle industries in particular. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is set to arrive in China on Thursday as the Biden administration prepares to raise Trump-era tariffs on Chinese goods, including electric vehicles.
And let's finish by looking at how the markets are doing this hour. Investors today kept an eye out for fresh data on inflation in the Eurozone, down 2.4% in March, as you can see there, down from a 10% peak in October 2022. So price increases definitely slowing down to that 2% target set by the European Central Bank. But most analysts agree that won't move the needle for central bankers and their assessment of when they'll start lowering interest rates. And that's why we're seeing markets pretty cautious today, with the DAX in Frankfurt down up a quarter of a percent, and the FTSE in London down almost 0.4%.
Charles, thank you so much for that look at the business news. You're watching France 24. Stay with us. I'll be back in a minute with more.